All right. Well, hey, thank you for giving us the floor here, Nikki. Good afternoon, everyone. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Jeff Griffin. I am a partner account manager with ADP, focusing on our partners who resell accounting and ERP software. For nearly 20 years, I have been working with organizations, consultants, and professionals that impact mid-sized businesses with a focus on human capital management. Currently, I work with customers of Sage Intacct to help them integrate their ERP with HR and payroll through deep integration that exists within Sage Intacct Payroll powered by ADP, which I'll get into in a moment. So we will be handling this off to Max here, our featured speaker, but I just wanted to introduce you real quick to ADP and our relationship with Sage. So for over 75 years, ADP has been working with businesses of all sizes to align the right solution that optimizes decision-making while protecting their business. We now service over 1 million customers globally, paying over 42 million workers. We're the largest filer of payroll taxes on behalf of our clients, moving over $3 trillion annually. And our innovation lives in the cloud, with over 90% of our clients on a strategic cloud-based platform. So in just a little bit about our relationship with Sage, in 2021, ADP, and specifically our Workforce Now application, supporting over 85,000 mid-sized customers, was selected by Sage to be the payroll engine for its Sage Intacct clients. This has allowed Sage Intacct customers to expand the capabilities of their ERP to include modern tools for talent, HR, benefits, time and attendance, and payroll management. The solution is branded Sage Intacct Payroll, powered by ADP, and it was launched just under 2 years ago. And we're proud to say that it boasts the most powerful integration available in the market between finance and HR payroll applications for mid-sized businesses. All right, so before I begin the transition over to Max, I believe we have our first poll question.
Yes, we sure do. I will pop that up on the screen over here. And the poll question for you first is, what system are you currently using for HR and payroll? Jeff and Max, do you love that ADP is the biggest one on this word cloud right now?
Love it, love it, love it.
Round of applause.
All right, those are slowing down a little bit, so I think everybody's had the chance to answer. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Nikki. Appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for participating there. Appreciate it. So, Max, if you could bring back up the presentation.
Yeah, Jeff, are you seeing a picture of my daughter and I? Or are you seeing poll question?
So nothing's being shared currently.
Nothing. What happened? Okay, sorry. I'm a WebEx family. I apologize. Do this one more time. Now, do you see poll question?
Sure do. Thanks, Max. All right, feel free to advance. Okay, so let's get to the objectives of our time together. If we do this right, and we think we will, you'll learn how to create effective AI prompts, gain a high-level understanding of the risks and benefits of AI, understand use cases for AI and business management as well, and of course, we'll have a slant towards payroll and HR. And hey, just before I turn it over to Max, I just want to give a little bit of a background on him. So Max is the practice lead for data solutions here at ADP. He has over 14 years of experience in the human capital management tech space. He works to help our clients navigate the future of work through data analysis and metrics. He works with developers to utilize ADP's data set of over 40 million employee records to create an environment for clients to easily access their own organizational data and benchmark that data across their industry, both regionally and nationally. While working to enhance that data experience for ADP clients, he also promotes ADP's latest and greatest generative AI tool, ADP Assist. And I'm happy to say that ADP Assist is included for Sage Intact Payroll by ADP customers. With that said, Max, I'd like to turn over to you for a fun session around Gen AI, HR, and payroll.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Greatly appreciate it. Excited to spend the next, call it 45, 50 minutes. We'll try to keep it as light and refreshing as we can. We've got some poll questions throughout. I apologize. I am fighting a little bit of that like tickle in my throat right now. So if I pause for just a sip of water, I apologize. But definitely want to make sure that we keep an eye on the chat. Jeff, I can't necessarily see it, but if there are any questions that come in, please don't hesitate to just hit a button, pause me, and more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. So, and if anybody has, and I'll tee this up really quickly, if you have the Chat GPT app, open it up, because we could do just a little fun exercise as we kick things off here. So, generative AI has been all the rage over the last probably like 18 to 24 months with the onset of OpenAI, of ChatGPT, and there's no doubt that generative AI solutions give us the ability to work much more effectively, work much faster, and be able to work at scale. So if you have not really leaned in to the generative AI revolution, if you will, I don't think it's anything that's necessarily going anywhere anytime soon. Obviously, organizations, individuals who are implementing generative AI solutions are starting to understand how it does give us the ability to be able to do things, again, much faster, much more effectively. But there are things that you ultimately want to make sure that you keep in mind, whether that is from a partnership perspective. If there's a generative AI solution that's obviously a part of your financial system, your human capital management system at the front end for how you drive revenue as an organization, or if you're obviously leveraging it to just help you do your day-to-day tasks much more faster, much more effectively. So we're going to talk a little bit about just keeping an eye out on those potential pitfalls, if you will, and make sure that you are ultimately staying compliant, right? Reducing bias through the data and through the generative AI technology. But then there's these blueberries, which is pretty wild. So if you have ChatGPT on your phone, you can open it up. If you don't, you'll see through the slides as well. It kind of just walks you through step by step. So do me a favor and type in, where is the R in blueberry? Where's the letter R in blueberry? And I did this presentation probably, at this point, 5, 6, 7 times. And it's very interesting to me that every time I put that out there, you get a bunch of different responses. One response could be, there is no R in the letter blueberry. And then you have a couple of these responses that you get here. The letter R appears twice in the word blueberry. It's found in the 5th and the 6th position. And so obviously, nope. Try again. So as you think about generative AI solutions, as you think about data, you ultimately want to ensure that you're thinking about what that initial prompt is. And when the initial prompt or the data set that's driving the responsiveness of the tool isn't very deep and very specific to that initial prompt, you could come out with an hallucination. And that's exactly what the blueberry scenario is with ChatGPT. Where's the R in letter blueberry? There is no R in the letter blueberry. That's an hallucination. So again, based off of the initial prompt and how specific the initial prompt was, and also the depth and the specificity of where that generative AI technology, where ChatGPT is going out to grab that data, right? It's got to be very deep and again, very specific. So as you think about generative AI risks, obviously we're going to talk about hallucinations, what hallucination is, how you can ensure that the partner or the technology that you're leveraging is working on its models, continuing to massage those models, ensuring that they are reducing the amount of hallucinations. Also ensuring that whatever partner or provider you're working with in your generative AI solution is also working and doing their best to remove any of the bias and ensuring that you're leveraging a very compliant and ethical solution technology. And then again, ultimately ensuring that, if you've got, guardrails in place, you've got committees, you have individuals across your organization who are ultimately ensuring that the generative AI solution and technology that you're using is in compliant, it's secure, and ultimately the data that's leveraging is also, it's got a lot of really good integrity there, and it's also very secure from a data perspective as well. So what is an hallucination? Well, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a plausible but false or misleading response generated by an artificial intelligence algorithm. A machine delivers a convincing but completely fictitious answer. So, long story short, ChatGPT is really good at giving you responses. It's not necessarily good at giving you the right response all the time. And that's where these hallucinations can happen. So, if you were to type in a response like this or initial prompt like this into ChatGPT, the specificity of that initial prompt is ultimately what's going to get you to the correct response. So if I was to type into ChatGPT, number the letters in Blueberry, so number all the letters in Blueberry, and tell me in what position does the letter R appear. And if I do that, I get the response of the letter Blueberry in all 9 letters. The letter R appears in the 7th and 8th positions. So again, when you think about the initial prompt, you want to ensure accuracy, specificity, and again, wherever that generative AI tool is pulling from for the response, the data has got to be specific and it's got to be deep. So congratulations to all of you on the phone who may have opened up their ChatGPT and typed in "where's the R in Blueberry" and was able to navigate that accordingly. You are now new certified prompt engineering 101. So congratulations, round of applause to those that are on the phone. So with that being said, before we get into our next portion here, we'll just open it up for another poll question. Nikki, I'll turn to you.
With hallucinations and bias in mind, does your organization currently have an AI governance policy that regulates how you use AI? All right, those are slowing down a little bit. So I will let you grab the screen share again, Max. Do you have any comments on the importance of an AI governance policy?
I do. I think that ultimately a lot about what we talk about today is technology that as an employer you've gone out and purchased, whether it's an ADP or whether it's another human capital management vendor, or whether it's a financial system or whether it's a CRM. And obviously you want to ensure that your employees and all of the generative AI solution and the unbiased data responses is really buttoned up from that perspective. But there's also the side that, at ADP, like we can't go out and use ChatGPT to help us create like any type of like emails or messaging or anything like that, right? So while you ultimately want to ensure the solutions and technologies that you are leveraging in-house are compliant and you've got those safeguards in place, and you've ultimately identified or elected those individuals across the organization who have the technologically savvy background in IT and technology to be a part of those committees, you really want to ensure that, for how you all do business and how you drive revenues, if there are those safeguards that need to be put in place from that perspective, that you ultimately have those as a part of your handbook, your onboarding, your policy procedures, et cetera, so that you, again, right, are protected not only with those tools that you use day in and day out, but also for the employees and external tools that they may be able to leverage to ultimately help them do their job better. And the last thing you would want is for them to be leveraging a tool that is ultimately creating bias with the responses based off of what that information, what they're trying to aggregate. So I would say that there's like both sides of the house, if you will. Now I'm gonna just figure out how I go back to my screen share.
Max, I'll also put out there, if anybody has developed their own policies, any advice or best practices, would love to see some of that going in the chat. I'm sure others would appreciate it for those that might not have established one yet.
Definitely. Thanks, Jeff. So we talked about hallucinations, what it is, how we can reduce hallucinations, obviously through specificity in the initial prompt, very deep, specific data set that's driving the responsiveness of it. But again, I think that if especially in the finance and human capital management space, you probably have seen just through your day-to-day readings. Obviously, I think that there's been some commotion in the marketplace about some organizations who haven't necessarily put those safeguards in place and have had this new latest and greatest technology sort of backfire, if you will. As I think about ADP as an organization and it's so large, and you all are probably very familiar with our overall approach to data integrity and security and the disaster recovery and ensuring that we've got password protections. Like we've got full-time like hackers who sit inside of ADP doing nothing but trying to break in our system. So like when it comes to data integrity, like that is everything to ADP. We've got obviously boards within ADP and individuals that are outside of ADP that are a part of those boards that are really there to ensure compliance with ADP data. And we put those same guardrails in place for our generative AI solutions and ensuring that, not only from a data perspective, but the models that we're building from a generative AI perspective have those same similar safeguards in place, because there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of uncertainty going on in the market right now. So as far as just, ensuring, secure, private, accurate, and safeguarded data is obviously going to be a big piece of that. A couple of things. The good thing is that it's never going to take away from the human touch. Obviously, it's going to help us, be able to create job descriptions on the fly. It allows us to be able to chat and be able to communicate, be able to get these responses, but it doesn't get like generative AI is never really truly like taking action. So there's always the human oversight. When you think about these AI governing principles, there's always a human oversight. There's always ways to ensure that you're mitigating bias. There's got to be that full transparency. You've got individuals behind the scenes who are continuing to massage the models, continuing to monitor the responses to ensure accuracy, continue to work on the specificity of the prompts. I think a lot of organizations are starting to think about just like the overall like culture. I think that you've got some folks that are really like heavily leaning in, and you've got some folks who are still on the fence. And for those that are leaning in, right, they're starting to build that culture of responsible AI. They may start to already have these councils and committees, right, as a part of their organizational strategy. And they're really ensuring that it's an inclusive technology and that there is a culture of ongoing like learning, right? So as you think about these committees, as you think about these councils that you can start to prepare and gather across your organization, like these are the governing principles that ultimately like I would hold tight to, which is, again, it's never going to take away from the human touch. You want to ensure you're mitigating bias. You want to ensure that there's full transparency there. You have individuals that are back there behind the scenes continuing to monitor, and you're creating a culture of responsible AI use, and it's inclusive, and that there is that ongoing training. So at the end of the day, like, we don't have to worry about blueberries or raspberries when it comes to day to day and what we're doing with generative AI. So if you want to throw in where the R in the letter raspberry, where's the letter R in the word raspberry, like, that's going to give you an interesting response as well. So as we transition to the next piece of our presentation, I think that when you think about artificial intelligence on our everyday life, I think this is something that we've been used to now for at least probably the last 5 to 6, 7, 8 years or more. And I think now we're being like forced from a professional perspective to be able to leverage it as well. And so I think, from a personal perspective, I live in just south of Nashville, Tennessee, and my wife works at Vanderbilt Health Systems, and she goes into a couple different offices throughout the week. And I think about her Apple CarPlay, right? When you go into your car every morning, you plug your car in. So, on Monday morning, she goes to the West Nashville office. On Tuesday, she goes downtown Nashville to the Vanderbilt campus, the main campus there. On Wednesday morning, she takes my daughter to work. On Thursday morning, she goes out to another Vanderbilt office in Lebanon. And then Friday, she's also taking my daughter to work. So every morning when she goes into her car and plugs in her Apple CarPlay, Apple Maps automatically knows exactly where she's going. On Monday, it knows she's going to West Nashville. On Tuesday, it knows that she's going downtown. On Wednesday, it knows she's going to school, drop off my daughter. Thursday, it knows she's going to Lebanon. On Friday, she knows that it's taking her to school as well. So again, without her having to do anything, but based off of the amount of transactions and the amount of times that she's punched in that address every morning, right, it starts to identify, right, what those patterns are. And those patterns are so important with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so as you think about it, while she may jump into the car on a Monday morning to be able to head to the West Nashville office, if I'm sick and she's got to take my daughter to school, then she knows that she has the ability to be able to quickly override that and be able to take my daughter to school. So again, it's never going to take away from the human touch. Generative AI can never take like true like action, but it does help reduce a lot of time, right? And just that little moment of just having to go into Apple Maps and click on a address to be able to take you somewhere. So we've been leveraging it so long in our personal lives. I think last year, Amazon stated sales from, I think it was like 33% of their sales came from, an individual who was able to purchase something right through Amazon because they had their, like, they were able to acquire that data or that retailer or that like consumer from another person. So they're basically able to just ensure that they're like able to track and know that, like, hey, the reason that this person purchased was because they have a friend that purchased before, and that friend has a friend that purchased before, and all those individuals are all within that same age group and sharing the same likes and interests and things like that, right? So that's where they're able to drive so much of their sales right through just like everyday life. But I think again, there's a little bit of the uncertainty there, and there's some statistics down here at the bottom that came from a recent Gartner study. So 60% of HR leaders really uncertain about the overall impact on technology trends like generative AI when it comes to HR and talent. But of those 60, 76% know that if they don't implement something over the next 12 to 24 months, right, they could find themselves being left behind. So I think that, again, this talks to the wait and see mentality that I think could have happened in business 10, 15 years ago. I think a lot back to ACA when the Affordable Care Act rolled out. And there was a lot of like uncertainty on, is this going to be something we're going to have to do, right, continuously, right, as an employer. And so ADP, obviously, we roll out our 1095C filings. And we would reach out to our clients and say, like, hey, we've got the payroll information, we have the benefits information, the time information. It just makes sense. Like, it's like a W-2, and we're going to provide and file that form on your behalf if you'd like us to. And they would say, like, well, we're going to wait and see how things kind of pan out here. And I don't think this is a technology that's going anywhere. I don't think necessarily like a wait and see mentality is ultimately sustainable moving forward. Just as you think about competition, as you think about benchmarks, as you think about yourself and how you manage the employee life cycle and how you recruit. And if you were to continue to do things as is, right? Or if you were continuing to do things on paper like we did, or disparate systems like we did a few years ago, and you have competitors in your industry that are local to you that may be potentially looking at poaching your talent, that are doing things with generative AI solutions, technology, they're forward thinking, and they're able to do things much faster, much more effectively, and at scale, right? So again, like leaning in sooner than later, I really think is important as far as this topic specifically, because again, like what would potentially you missing out on if you don't implement something right in the next year or two. And I throw this up here, and it's just like a bunch of just like announcements and press releases from organizations in HR and in finance, and everyone is starting to talk about and tout what they are doing, what they are building from a generative AI technology solution. And again, as you think about the first few slides that we went to, really what you want to ensure is depth, specificity, and accuracy in the responses that initial prompt is going to give you. And so everybody is out there talking about it right now. And I throw this out there to say, again, like if you haven't completely leaned in, like now is the time. Just don't think this is a technology that's going anywhere anytime soon. Eightfold AI is a generative AI organization. For any of you folks out there who know Ultimate Chronos Group, UKG, this is who they've worked with on their generative AI solutions. And they released a study, and the study found that 92% of HR leaders intend to increase their use in generative AI in at least one of these areas. And so I thought that I would just take a moment and be able to give you a couple of use cases before we dive into the specific use cases that ADP is building, to be able to just give you a little bit of a better understanding. So you think about recruitment now, generative AI, if you were to ask ChatGPT or any generative AI solution, I need a job description for a software developer in Washington, D.C., and you'll get that within seconds. So if you didn't have that type of technology, think about how long it would have taken you to create that job description. More than likely, you would have gone to Google, you would have gone to your CPA, you would have gone to your broker, you would have gone to your best friend in the industry, and then you've got to be able to prepare that on a Word document. Then you send it off and be able to get it approved. And that could take a day and a half or 2 days just to create a job description. Now I'm creating job descriptions within seconds. I think a lot about benefit automation. Not only will generative AI give us the ability to, as you think about open enrollment, be able to nudge individual employees, who we all have these employees that have gotten all the way to the end of open enrollment. We've got 4 or 5 days left. They still haven't completed open enrollment. Now we can set the technology up to just continue to ping and nudge these individuals to reinforce the fact that they need to go in and complete open enrollment. You also have decision support that can be embedded into your benefit administration's processes to be able to support and help and answer questions as you think about answering HR related or employee related questions. So you've got decision support within benefits enrollment, and you also have the ability to be able to have the employee who may have specific questions around PTO or around time off or whatever it may be, to be able to go in and be able to chat with an individual and get those questions answered without taking the efforts and onus and time for you individuals within HR and within finance. So no doubt that generative AI is going to, again, help us do things much faster, much more effectively. And these are just some of the areas of opportunity and where that's going to be able to support in your efforts. So as you think about analytics, and very quickly and easily able to identify across the organization what department has the highest turnover, what manager has the highest turnover, and be able to ask that question and very quickly and easily get a nice graphical response. Like, that's huge, because if you didn't have that, you would have to go into reporting, or you'd have to go into your dashboards. If you didn't have that customized, you'd have to go and build out those metrics on your own. So again, it's going to allow us to do things much faster and much more effectively. So I thought I would give you a little bit of an understanding of ADP's overall approach to generative AI, ADP Assist. So for ADP clients that are out there, ADP Assist is a solution that will be embedded and overlay all the solutions that you have within Workforce Now. And there's a couple of different use cases as far as how it works, and what the practitioners, what the managers, supervisors, what your employees, and how they'll be able to interact differently with ADP Assist. So I thought I'd take a second and just talk a little bit about just our overall approach. And it's very keep it simple. And when you've got good technology in place, and you have really smart individuals that are manning that technology, like it makes it much easier. And so it's a very like keep it simple mentality for us. Make it easy, make it smart, and make it human. And we'll talk about how we're building things specifically to individual personas across the enterprise. So make it easy, transactions. You think about the amount of transactions that ADP sees because of our size, because of the amount of individuals that we're paying and the amount of clients that we have. All of those transactions, all those unique clicks that transpire within Workforce Now, whether that's a requisition that gets pushed out to ZipRecruiter or Indeed, or that's an onboarding exercise that's completed, or open enrollment, or a termination. And we'll just take terminations, for example. Last year, our technology saw over 12 million termination transactions. So our data scientists come back and take a look at all of those unique reasons for why individuals turned. And that's what they build into our predictors. And that's where the data insight comes. So when you see upwards of 12 million termination transactions, you can start to get a pretty good pulse as to the why and when individuals may be looking to exit the organization. When was the last time that they received a pay increase? When was the last time they received a promotion? Are they getting the right proper amount of overtime hours? How far are they traveling to the office? So all of the transactions and all of the behind the scenes work is really what drives the insight and the predictors. And now with generative AI technology, we now can make it human. So as you think a lot about the notifications that you maybe get on your phone from a personal perspective, it's the same type of environment that we're creating from a professional standpoint, where the generative AI solution gives us the ability to be able to notify and prompt an individual to say, it looks like turnover is higher this month compared to this time last year, and give you the ability to identify the why behind that. So what the technology gives us the ability to be able to do is proactively let you know the good and bad that could be happening within your organization. So it's just a little bit of a understanding of our overall like process and thought process as we continue to evolve, right? So much of this comes from, and like the accuracy comes from like that depth and the specificity of the data. And when you think about ADP data, and I'll just take your eyes to the bottom of the slide, we've got a lot. We've got a lot of data. So when you think about structured data is data that we could pull out of Workforce Now, pull out of a CRM, pull out of a financial system, right? So again, like we've got a lot, 1.2 million clients, upwards of 42 million records. And you think about the unstructured data. Unstructured data could be an image, could be a text file, could be a Word document, right? So we're compiling all that information. It could be a call log. So when you think about the amount of structured and unstructured data, that structured and unstructured data is what is driving the responsiveness of the initial prompt that may come in through a chat. It could come in because someone clicks on a question and they need to get a response. So again, when you think about the importance, it's really ensuring that you've got really deep and really specific data that's driving the responsiveness of that tool. When you think about human capital management data, there's not a lot that ADP hasn't seen. So it ensures that our responses are ultimately going to be as accurate as we can make them. So let's talk about ADP Assist and the way that it works. So there's really like 3 use cases. So there's the predictive risk assessment. So what it can do is it can identify these data anomalies and proactively notify you as practitioners. I just talked through the turnover use case just a second ago, and I want to share all these use cases with you here in just a few moments. But again, right, it can identify these data anomalies and proactively notify you as a practitioner. So let's just say your headquarters is here in Nashville, Tennessee. You may have some home short employees. You may have some different locations across the country. And you have an employee that moves, right, unbeknownst to you, but you get notified because they changed their address, right, within their employee profile. And they're now living in a state where you're not currently set up with those tax IDs. So the technology will ultimately notify you that this individual has moved into a state where you're not currently set up with tax IDs, and ultimately walks you through step by step how to acquire those IDs. So that's one of the predictive use cases that we have. As I mentioned earlier, just think about managers, supervisors who are forgetting to clock in and out at the end of the day. They've got to prepare for payroll at the end of a pay period, all the exceptions that they need to go in and override. any of those exceptions are ultimately going to be pushed to them, so they get that little nudge day in and day out of changes that they need to go in and make to ensure that you all as practitioners can close payroll, process, and get your people paid. So whether that's open enrollment, whether that's forgot to clock out at the end of the day, that's an employee level, that's manager, supervisor level, they're ultimately going to get those nudges to just continue to push them to be able to get things done without you having to kickstart any of those processes as a practitioner. And then ultimately the last piece is the ability to be able to chat. I think really what we've done with ADP Assist is create an environment that allows people to that aren't maybe the most data savvy kind of meet an individual regardless of where they are in their data journey. If they're super savvy data savant, they ultimately know the data they want to get out of the solution. If they're not the most data savvy, then data kind of scares them. We've made it as easy as them going to a question bank, clicking on a question and getting an answer. They can type in a question and they can get an answer. So I think we've really built a tool that allows us to meet an individual regardless of where they are, and they don't have to be the most data savvy to be able to get what they want out of the solution. And we build it specific to the individuals across the enterprise because everyone's going to interact with ADP Assist differently. Again, if I'm a practitioner, super user like yourselves, I want access to everything. Any question that I ask ADP Assist, whether it's payroll information, benefit information, compliance information, I ultimately need to be able to aggregate and get that information. If I'm a candidate or just an employee, there's only so much information that I need to see. I need to see my personal information. I need to be able to ask questions around like handbook policy, procedure, what the benefits enrollment packages and things look like. But again, like that employee doesn't need to necessarily see all of the data across the enterprise. And if I'm a manager, not only do I want to have my own information and be able to access and see my personal information, but also need to see my team, my people. I need to see all their information. But again, I probably don't need to see very like detailed organizational high level information as a manager. So every individual across the enterprise is going to interact with it differently. And I think that speaks to the make it human, kind of like the top of the pyramid there, like building it specific to personas, where I think a lot of individuals or organizations have built a generative AI solution and it's just very generic in nature. So let's talk to some of the specific use cases. I just hit on this one, which is the tax registration use case. So again, this would notify you as a practitioner that you have employees in states where you're not currently set up with those IDs. It notifies you, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, the little chat that's going back and forth. There's a great video, Jeff, that if you can follow up with them after the fact, that kind of step-by-step walks you through like exactly like a day in the life of ADP Assist, which is really neat. But you can, again, see, right? It identifies the anomaly. It notifies you as the practitioner and ultimately assists you in accessing and getting that ID so that from a compliance perspective, you're in a really good spot, right? So that's ultimately one of the use cases there. Payroll exceptions. So we talked about this too. If you think about it, employees are clocking in, they're clocking out. They forget to clock out at the end of the day. They're automatically going to go in and they're going to get a nudge. That supervisor, that manager is also going to get a nudge. Hey, make sure that you go complete your time card so that I can get this payroll completed and I can get it over to our controller so they can actually process our payroll. They can close payroll and actually get our individuals paid. So payroll exceptions is going to be a big piece of this as well. Analytics. So for you individuals that leverage our analytics or our enhanced insights, which are our benchmarks, this is a very easy way for you to quickly identify what's happening within the organization. So not only do you have the technology that's identifying these anomalies on your behalf, but if you're in the office and someone comes in and says, what's turnover for our sales team in New York? You can literally go to the chat for ADP Assist and you can type in what my turnover is for sales in New York. And this is exactly the response that you're going to get. A very nice, clean, graphical response that shows all the individuals by department or all the individuals by employee type and what exactly turnover looks like. So again, very quickly and very easily. This is even getting down to the employee level. So if you had an individual that came in and asked and said, hey, I need to know when the last time Jeff Grimm got a pay increase. If you didn't have ADP Assist, you'd probably dive into a piece of your technology, or it may be in some type of, file folder in some type of cabinet somewhere, and you have to run over there and be able to grab it. It's going to take you a couple minutes to be able to do that. But if you're sitting in a meeting and someone wants to say like, hey, what's our turnover look like in our New York location? Boom, you could pull that up within seconds. So again, right, much quicker, much more effective, and at scale. So this is really clean, really super sharp, and it also gives you the ability to be able to share. So as you see actions there, a lot of our nonprofit clients will use the actions tab, and they'll take their analytics and they'll start to build out their executive briefs, or if they've got like quarterly board meetings. So you can export this, dump it right into a PowerPoint, and be able to start to build out your presentation for the board, right, really quickly and easily based off of the responses in these graphical forms that you're able to receive, which is pretty cool. Job description. I talked a little bit about this earlier. So again, this is something that you could leverage ChatGPT for right now. But I think ADP's got upwards of 140 million resumes or something like that we've got built within our system from individuals that have applied. So as you think about how quickly and easily you could create a job description when necessary for, a new role that you don't currently have, or you want to just take a look at, your job descriptions currently and maybe make some enhancements or make some updates to them, you have the ability to be able to do that. So you can go into ADP Assist and you can get a job description created quickly, easily, on the fly, and it's only going to take you a couple of minutes to do so. Personalized insights. I like this because this shows that it is also mobile enabled. So employees, supervisors, managers like yourself have the ability to be able to have these insights and also be able to view them from a mobile perspective. So that would be, again, they missed a punch, they're going in to request time off, they have employee time card submission, they've got a manager that needs to go in and make approvals, they've got open enrollment that's coming up. So again, being able to have a mobile capability and experience for employees, I think is obviously going to be great, because again, everybody knows that everything is happening on your phone. People are in it, in between calls, in between and for the back end of the day, whatever it may be. So again, like the personalized insights that can be provided here, obviously I think is going to be huge. So as you think about an employee that calls in sick one day, you have an employee that calls in sick, then ultimately you need to know who that next individual is up that's going to be able to backfill that specific schedule, if you will, that specific block of time. You've got somebody right there that's telling you, hey, this is the next person that you need to ask if they can come in and work, right? This is ultimately able to help drive that to you instead of you having to go and find that individual. It's going to populate that individual for you, which is pretty neat. Virtual chat. So this, I think, again, is probably one of the coolest pieces. So they've got a question bank. So managers, supervisors down at the employee level, based off of what their accessibility or role is within the organization, they can literally go to a question, click on a question, and get a response. Or they can go in and they can type in a question and be able to get a response. And it's very similar to if you've been out on a website and you see that little chat bot that pops up in the bottom right. And instead of having to go out and talk to an individual, you can get a couple of those questions answered on your own before, getting to a point of, necessary, like escalation to get like a more like specific question answered. But again, just the ability to be able to like quickly and easily, especially for employees. I think a lot about those practitioners that are on the call right now. Think about how many employee questions hit the back office and how much time they're actually spending on just handling those employee questions around how much PTO do I have, or around when's our open enrollment, or around what do benefits look like, where they can literally type in a question into ADP Assist from a mobile perspective and be able to get that answer about anything that happens or pertains to them from an employee perspective. I think is ultimately going to be, massive for all you as practitioners to, again, really ensure that you're focusing your time and efforts on more of like the strategic initiatives within your current role. So I think with that, we've got our last and final poll question. So Nikki, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Max. So considering everything you've heard today, and now that you've got the wheels turning a little bit, how likely is it that the use of generative AI will help accelerate your business's success in the next 12 to 24-ish months?
A lot of B's.
Kind of thought where this one would land. I don't know about you, Max. Guarded optimism,
Yeah.
right?
It's interesting. The more of these I've done, that somewhat likely, like that you start to see like the pendulum shift, and that individuals are starting to be like, I don't know that there's going to be, make choices moving forward, right? Which is neat to see. That obviously individuals are starting to lean in and really make sure that they are starting to get their head around how this can ultimately help them, as they think about their role and day in and day out.
Oh, hey, thanks for that, Max. Really appreciate you going through all that. Obviously, appreciate everyone's attention on this content. I did put into the chat a less than 2-minute clip on ADP Assist, so feel free to check it out in between sessions here. Listen, if we can answer any further questions, we're always happy to. You can see my contact information on the screen here. To Max's point, like our goal here, with AI at ADP is just to make it easy, make it smart, make it human, help you guys get more out of your day, so you can be that much more impactful to those who you serve. So thanks, Dean Dorton. Thanks to the audience. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Max and Jeff. I don't see any questions immediately in the chat or the Q&A, so we will go ahead into our final break of the day, take about 10 minutes before we get to our closing keynote, and we'll resume here at 3 p.m. Eastern.